Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Industry and Transition Podcast. I'm thrilled to have Rob Bartenstein with us today, and he's CEO of Kestra. I've been on the show before. Actually, I can't tell what firm you're with because it says Kestra on the background.
Like maybe subtlety isn't exactly what we went for.
I know you're like a coach. You're like
I'm a Ted Lasso.
Yeah, right. right. So how was 20? Let's get right into it. We only have a short time here. So what was 2021? What's your kind of takeaways from 21, and what are we looking for in 22?
Well, for us, 2021 was really good. Another record year of growth. And, we find ourselves, as much as anything, almost not throttling back so much, but you almost have to be more choosy, which is a really quality problem. So, we ran into a few opportunities that weren't the right fit for us. And the luxury of the kind of environment we're in right now is we can focus on the folks that really are a fit for us and that feel like we're a fit for them. And that's the kind of cultural alignment that you want, because our relationship with our advisors is so intimate. I always joke, it's like every day is Thanksgiving, and you don't want angry.
And you and I have worked together before in these, startup.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're starting, you're kind of a little bit maybe more open to talking to a whole bunch of different people, but I think it's a sign of growth, and it's a sign of maturity of the firm and of the industry and you also got to really identify your prospect. I mean, that's a real important thing for firms to sort of keep in mind, and you save yourself, tons of time and treasure if you can really figure that out in the beginning, who you want.
So true. And look, just because we're a hammer does not make everyone a nail. And the reverse is also true. We're not a good fit for everyone. And we're frank about how our model works and the economics associated with that sort of service. And a lot of people want that, and a lot of people don't want that. So it really is a function of, and I'm frank with people about it. When you're doing your due diligence in this space, coming out of the wires like we all have, there's a lot of work to do, number one. But number two, you've got to find the right fit for you, because there is no silver bullet. There is no one firm that does everything well, that's the absolute best stop for everyone. It's a fit issue as much as anything.
Well, and that's why it's good that there's a sort of a proliferation. It's good and bad. The 21, I think, was a surprisingly good year for all of us, and we all were so worried about it. What was going to happen? What do you think's coming next? Because we're kind of through this now. It's a post-COVID world. So what's next?
Well, it's trying to be a post-COVID world. I mean, I don't know that we're, I bounce back and forth between Texas and Florida and California, and those are three very different places. So bless you. It's sort of situational, whether or not you're in a post-COVID world. But I mean, on balance, it is becoming a post-COVID world.
Some of what I mean also by post-COVID is a little bit of, there are some lessons, and we talked a little bit about this. There's some lessons we want to take from it, right? There are things we're just as happy to leave behind, but some of the stuff like this, like the Zoom technology, is working well. That's going to continue to be a thing for clients, and it's going to continue to be a thing for firms recruiting, which I don't think you or I would have thought would have worked. You would have thought, I'm not moving a $300 million book, just without shaking hands, but people did.
It's now been done. Yes,
it's been done. And a lot of this technology stuff will keep, but we talked a little bit of things like real estate. I know you have a take on that. I think there are some long-term effects here. Maybe less for you than for others, but industry.
Well, it's interesting for us. I mean, we're over 60,000 square feet now around the country. So we sort of jokingly say we are running a mini REIT, which we didn't intend to do, but that's just the nature of the model that we're administering. So, but we're 60,000 plus square feet the hard way, 2,000 at a time. So.
But now that turned out to be the better way.
That did turn out to be the better way,
because you're not stuck with a whole bunch of 10,000 square foot leases in downtown.
That's absolutely right. So what's happening is at 10, 20, 30, 40,000 of square feet, you see people trying to chop it up or come down in size and minimize their fixed costs on real estate that they now think that they probably don't need as much of every day. You see people rotating workforces in through the office. So, you might have 500 employees, but only 250 in the office at any one time. So how much square footage do you really need? But the knock-on effect of that, Tony, is that the competition for 2,000 square feet has gotten kind of stiff. We used to sort of operate below the radar and, almost doing a landlord a favor. Like he's got this little one-off
right.
2,300 and we're taking it off his hands and he's happy to let someone have it. But now we're bumping into everyone from, from tech companies to other firms in our space looking for that same size office space. But the good thing about it is our model seems to have been the right model through COVID. And I was, I saw witness to that when I first emerged from COVID and started traveling. And the first leg that I did was we have an office in Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra, and I went all the way down our 4 offices on the Florida coast. And at each stop on my way down towards Miami, at each stop, the folks all said the same thing, which was, thank God we had this office. And because our friends at Merrill, Morgan, UBS, Wells, they weren't even allowed to go in.
But that's the whole, that's the whole, we're hitting on one of the major benefits of being independent is the idea that, you're making your own time, you're making your own space. And these are all custom, you don't have a cookie cutter approach, right? These are all custom. Somebody's 2,500 or 3,000, you're willing to do it. It does make you more agile, and you can take credit for it, even though you and I both know it was the pandemic that made you smart.
Better be lucky than good, right? All right, I'll accept that.
So that being said, there are anything else? Did I miss something on the COVID stuff? I'd like to go on to kind of where
I think everybody is adapting more or less the same. I think that everyone's, you mentioned Zoom is the new sort of accepted technology with clients. I would say flexible work time is the new accepted normal for employers, right? Or for contractors, or however you want to phrase it. So
easy. It's still all these things that are happening. It's all these things that are happening are easier in our business. It's very hard because I don't know anything about advertising this and then as a business, but our business has really adapted well for this because we have what amounts to salespeople out in the field. You want them out in the field, and you want them working. It kind of doesn't matter where from. There's not so much centralized, except for you, like, the corporate office, you need some stuff. But for the typical advisor in the field, our business works pretty well. And if people,
we had already, exactly right. And we had already, just because it seemed like the right path to be headed down, we had already made the business highly mobile. 3 years ago, you could operate this entire business off your iPhone if you really wanted to. So we were kind of in the right place at the right time as far as all that flexibility stuff goes. And it was fortunate.
And I think larger firms just have a struggle with it because they're stuck with these leases. They're stuck with mandates. They do tend to run everything to the lowest common denominator. And I think that turned out to not end up being a great feel,
Look, flexibility is not in their DNA. And that's a big part of the problem. And that's sending people in a different direction. They're not, frankly, to be fair to them, they're really not set up to be flexible. And they've got requirements and issues like you just referenced that prevent them from creating the kind of flexibility that someone who's operating as an independent contractor really has by nature.
Look, for some people, obviously, there's still a good choice, right? But especially when you look at what we're facing. So I look at this next year, sort of COVID, whether Omicron comes back, and we'll figure it out. Our business is flexible enough to work. But taxes, inflation, we have somebody in a regulatory position that wants to really has this sort of, he's going after literally we'll say it's a theory of everything. We're tackling this 39 or 40 some odd, issues that each one is a priority in going after. So there are challenges.
Yeah, there are, for sure. And there's this feeling right now that this administration across the board wants to try to boil the ocean on that front. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that gets done. And of course, we have midterms coming up, which can create the traditional level of gridlock that would thwart some of that. But there's no question that regulation continues to be a bigger and bigger issue that needs to be dealt with by everyone in our business. That trend is unlikely to change at any point. And as you and I have joked about in the past, it's good to have Big Brother versus going it alone. A lot of folks I talk to in the beginning of their journey, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million type teams are looking and should look at the possibility of establishing their own RIA. And there are a lot of ways to do that, and it's not rocket science, and you can certainly find partners to help you get that done. But the thing that I always remind folks is there's good and bad with that. You know,
Yeah.
you will have total control and you will have total responsibility. And most of us, in as good as our careers were, as successful as we may have been as advisors or what have you, we didn't spend a lot of time in audits or dealing with regulators and things of that nature. So our model,
I mean, look at like the Reg BI. I mean, just the
yeah,
stuff you have
yeah,
to
I
worry
mean,
about. It's
yeah.
crazy. And you want, I don't know if it's me and I'm out there, I want somebody to tell me, just do this. This is what you're supposed to do. And
That's
we're banking on this.
Yeah.
So the whole
Yeah.
firm is going to do this. I mean, it just gives you a feeling of comfort.
We're all in this, in our deal, we're all in this together, you know, and our compliance folks and our supervision folks are there to be an adjunct to help advisors navigate the water. Because really at the end of the day, Tony, and this is, you know, my bedrock theme has always been about business value and business valuation. And what I want for our advisors is they are able to achieve premium value, right, premium EBITDA multiple for their business, for whenever or wherever they choose to make that an issue or a factor in their lives. And running into compliance issues is the surest way to knock that number down. So we want our folks to be partnered with the people who will keep them safe and keep them out of trouble. And like you said, the world is changing very quickly year over year. It used to be, you know, when you and I were in the business in the early days, you know, 5-year kind of evolution of things, 10-year evolution of things. Now it's a 10-month evolution of things.
And there's a lot more people at the top of the funnel.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
it's hard to keep up. So, I mean,
yeah,
to the original point, you can start your own RIA, but you're going to own all those decisions, and being audited is no fun. No matter how good a shape you're in for that audit.
But even on things like, you know, not that we're relying on, I mean, for the average advisor, you know, even things like taxes and inflation, you have an opinion, obviously, right? And you need to have one, right? But it's good. It's nice if the firm does too, and or has experts, you know, maybe on both sides of an opinion, right, so that you can sort of access that stuff.
Yeah, and we've taken a big first step this year on that front by bringing in someone who's going to be a chief investment officer. Kara Murphy joined us from Goldman United, and yeah, I think it's going to be good for us to have that resource in-house. And it, you know, of course, it's like everything else that we do. It's available for an advisor's use, but it's not mandatory in any way whatsoever. But I think having that sort of resource, having the financial planning resources in-house, bringing the CFPs in, it's a big deal, that can do casework and things like that. I think those are the sorts of developments that really matter to people in their day-to-day business, in their work with clients. And that's really where we're trying to stay focused.
Well, and that's what, you know, in my mind, when you're looking to, I want to go independent to an RA or a firm, those are the things that you have to think about, you know, because scale wise, I really can't bring that together, you know, and how organized am I going to be around like 12, you know, Reg 12 BI, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also want to talk, I don't know, I've been writing a lot about, you know, training now. Mm-hmm. So I see that as sort of an issue for the industry as a whole, especially the independent world. So Merrill's now basically out of the traditional training business. And in the piece that I wrote, I said that it used to be the best job you can have, in my opinion, was to fail out of the Merrill training program. Yeah. You failed out, right? And you were totally trained, you were licensed, you had maybe a few clients that you can contact, that kind of thing. But boy, did that make you valuable to a guy like you, right? Who has teams and is already trained. So, well, you know, they're out. So they're still going to have, instead of an 80% failure rate, they're going to have an 80%, you know, success rate by putting all these people in, you know, bank programs. So of course they'll be successful, but they won't be brokers when they come out.
No, that's right. No, and look, I think that's a loss for the industry, and I'll explain that. But I mean, I was fortunate to go through the training program at DLJ in their headquarters in New York, back when firms, you know, committed a lot of capital to things like that. And I think I had an experience that is on par with the best you could have had. I mean, Goldman's training program was very good. DLJ's was very good.
I did Merrill's. It was terrific.
And then, but like, yeah, you're right. And on the mass retail side, Merrill's was unquestionably the best. In fact, my partner and I ran that program in DC for a couple of years. And those were some of the, you know, best times I had in the business. But yeah, so losing that training engine for the business, for the industry overall, is not probably a net positive. And we have this bizarre inverted pyramid of demographic where we're so top heavy on an age basis. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think you can almost default to the bigger firms will continue to get bigger. I'm talking about independent firms now. They're going to continue to make acquisitions. You've got every institutional player in the space is committing capital through private equity to go out and buy firms above a certain level of EBITDA, and stack the revenue and stack the assets, et cetera. So it's going on at every level. But to get right down to the nitty gritty of your point, which is when you don't have a training program, what do you do? It's an interesting question, because look, we have the luxury of, as you know, of only working with very seasoned, experienced people. So I'm not going to start a training program. There's almost zero chance that that's
but in your terms, you have succession issues. You've got
correct.
You have issues that normally a training program, without thinking about it, sort of helps.
It's true. And so what we do really to work on succession is we're really engaged with all of our firms on M&A and building that farm system, which is going out and basically acquiring other advisors to come in. They use our capital to do that through recruiting structures. And those work out really well. I mean, if you bring somebody aboard who's a hot shot, but only has sort of 35 million, been in the business for a couple of years, but has a lot of potential, that's an annuitized play that's going to, go out over the next 20 years. The reverse of that is you've got someone who's on the back end and maybe down to 120 to $80 million of assets and looking to retire in 3 years. We'll help them go out and bring those folks in as well, migrate those assets over, introduce their clients to the firm for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then gracefully exit. So that advisor gets 2 bites at the apple. He gets the recruiting deal on the front end, and he gets an annuity-based sort of payout, annuitized payout on the back from the team itself or from the firm itself. So it might be a 5-year declining sort of structure. But I think that's how this stuff is going to go for a while. The
only problem with that is that we're not bringing new blood in. You're still,
this is what I was going to say. This is what I was going to add to that. The other issue is going to be much less of a standardization of what constitutes training anymore, right? So what you're going to have is people coming out of college who maybe have an interest in the business and interned at a firm or what have you, and then that firm decides to bring them aboard. Well, then they're going to be trained the way that firm wants them to be trained specifically. So you're going to have every niche of the independent space, of which there are, a million, out there doing one-offs. And we do have, and we do continue to work on resources for folks that want to do that sort of thing. So that's a partnering issue in the sense that, if you're looking for who you want to affiliate with, you may want to put an eye towards, what sort of resources do they bring to bear to help me develop the business in specific verticals or over time or through succession or what have you.
I think it's just something you can't ignore, especially as you go independent. You realize that that's going to be, if not today, 10 years from now, it's going to be a problem, and we have to address it. It also, training touches on a lot of things. It touches on diversity, inclusion, and touches on which you can make an economic case for today, right? So you could say that the next generations of, if not great wealth, but at least wealth that we would work with on a regular basis, or women and minorities, or, and it's an opportunity that we're going to lack because, as I always say, when I started in the business, my dad was a dentist. So all my clients were dentists. All my dad's friends, I'd call them up and, I could talk a little bit about the office because I knew what it was like. And that was it. That's how I started, so people have to start today somehow. And we've got to figure, all this sort of leads to that, right? How can we make it all work together?
It's an antiquated notion, but I still believe that markets are efficient. And what, as you talk through that, like what I see are opportunities for larger custodians, for asset management firms who are always seeking to deliver value add, which is difficult to do in a disaggregated independent space. It's a lot easier to show up at Merrill and say, here's our program, distributed across 15,000 people. In the independent space, you're knocking on doors one at a time. So I would suspect that you're going to see some of that coming out of that space as well. Some of the support for those sorts of ideas and programs and structure, and kind of best practices would probably be.
It strikes me that it touches everything. So that's one of the reasons I would, really thinking about succession.
It's a really
people coming in and as this grows, as you said, markets are efficient. They are. So advisors are voting with their feet and they're going independent, but the other pieces have got to catch up. Those are my concerns for the future.
It's a very thoughtful point that probably doesn't get nearly the attention it should. but it will.
Unless you read AdvisorHub.
When it gets, well, that's right. That's right. Voice in the wilderness. It will get the attention when it starts to be critical, for sure.
Yeah. And I think we're probably 5-7 years away from that.
I think that's right.
All right. So look, we're at 20 something minutes. People love us, but I don't think they want to listen to us much more than this. So
Right.
Anything that, and dogs barking in the background was my fault, not Rob's. So just FYI.
That's just luck.
Anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to hit on?
No, I think it's always this time of year. I think everybody gets a little nostalgic. We're in the holiday season. We're getting towards the end of the year. And obviously we started out by looking back. I look into next year, and I'm as worried going into next year as I was worried coming into this year. Maybe I just never stopped worrying.
That's every CEO worries.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast. I mean, I'm always paranoid, and maybe that's not the right word, but I'm always concerned about how things are looking and trying to read the tea leaves. But I would say by and large, despite a lot of the exogenous issues that surround us right now, whether it's inflation or market uncertainty or taxation or what have you, geopolitical events, they're always there. And they're there to, in some part in our sphere of the world, they're there to create the sort of, lack of clarity that makes the market actually.
And in some way they help us, because if there weren't problems, you wouldn't need advice.
That's my point. Exactly. So I think I look into next year and I feel like I'll talk about the business as a whole. Meaning all of us. I think the independent space continues to be the bright and shining light. I think that the trend is no longer a trend. It's a fact of life that the independent space is going to be bigger than the wires that spawned it, or the other traditional independent space combined with the wires. And that's never going to change, at least not in our lifetime, in all likelihood. So, we at Kestra, at Private Wealth Services, we just continue to want to get our fair share of the pie. And sometimes we get a little lucky and we get more than our fair share. But there's enough room for everybody who's gotten into this business to be in it, which is great. And the ultimate winners are the advisors and their clients. And so when we started this thing, we were all pretty passionate about that, right? It was like, let's get away from the evil empire. Let's do the right thing. Let's get back to basics. And so from a sort of nostalgic, backward looking / forward looking position, I feel great about this industry. I feel great about the people that I get to work with in this space. And I think we're all doing the right thing. It's definitely headed in the right direction. Yeah,
we're tremendously lucky to be, we're always lucky to be in this business. It's been great for all of us for a long time. And I agree, the future's bright. I think we have to think about some of these things that we talked about, just have it in mind, be mindful.
Oh, we need people like you to keep bringing them up. I'm so busy in my business every day. I don't always think as deeply as you do. So I
appreciate that. All right, but it was great to see you. Well, we'll see you again. And people can go to, Kestra's link on our site and enjoy that. And we look forward. And I think we have your podcast on now too.
Oh, good. Yeah. We're going to be doing more of those.
Yeah, it's fun. They're really good. So I encourage everybody to check that out. All right, Rob, take care.
Thanks,
Good talking.